And I won't lie, a lot of my sport choices, I also did Kung Fu for a while because the guy who came to demonstrate it looked like Keanu Reeves, but better and taller. So I did join Kung Fu for quite some time because the instructor was very easy on the eye. I definitely got into running because there were some nice boys running.
I see
I haven't thought about that for a long time.
Welcome. Hey, Alice. How are
Hey,
you?
you. Good. How are you?
I'm doing well. So we thought it would be a good idea to get together and start recording us chatting about running and life and work. I think it was even you who sort of like described us. We're just kind of like two average runners. We're not professionals and it's not our day job, but it's something we both care about. And yet we wanted to use it as a way that we just talk about what the things that go on, things we see. But you were sort of saying that like we think we're average, but you had some encounter recently about like, people actually don't think we're kind of strange with what we do.
Yeah, so if you're speaking to other runners, it's quite easy to quite quickly figure out where you might sit in terms of what sort of a runner the other person is. But today I was actually running a workshop and somebody who knows me there said, "Oh, are you running any marathons this year?" I said, "Oh, yes, I've got London coming up. It's a few weeks away." And so I think a lot of people know, I think it's something like 1 in 5 million chance of getting a London ballot spot because that's how many people apply for the ballot. So you either have to qualify because you run fast enough or you need to get a charity place and run. I don't know. I think you have to raise thousands of pounds, thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
So I happen to qualify in what they call good for age. So basically in my age group, because I'm a bit older, pushing, let's just call it mid to late 40s. If I can run a marathon in a certain time, then I get a place. But I personally don't think it's a hard qualifying time. It's something like 3 hours, 45 minutes or 3 hours, 40. Whereas the men, I think for my age group, you have to run 3 hours. And you and I know that's a huge difference, like really significant difference.
Yeah.
So I always feel embarrassed saying, well, I've got a good for age, but I'm quite old. I don't actually have to run that fast. But they were shocked because they think like anything under 4.5 hours would be like an amazing marathon time. So it just sort of was putting it a bit in perspective that I feel a bit embarrassed saying I've got this good for age spot as if I'm great when I really feel like it's not an achievement and they just think anything under sort of 4.5 is like, next level amazing. So yeah, I think that was my
It's so funny. All
today.
Our perspectives get so warped, right? I went for a run yesterday, and one of the longer runs I'd done recently because I had like a little reset and ended up being 16 miles. And then I went to an event in the afternoon, like a networking event at South by Southwest, and was meeting someone there, and something came up and then they misheard me speak because I'd said something, how I'd ran. They asked me what I'd been up to, and I said I'd ran 16 miles. They're like, "Oh wow, you ran 6 miles? That's like so long." And it was like, no, 16 miles. But even then, I was like, no, it's not that long, really. It's like how do we normalize this stuff?
No, I know. I mean, I think you have to think back to what are those programs called, like Couch to 5K.
Yeah.
I don't know how many that is in miles, 3 miles or something like that. And then you realize, and actually, I don't know about, maybe it's a good point to get into this, but I mean, running is hard no matter how fit you are.
Yeah.
Most runs, there's some element. You're either doing an easy run and you're tired because of the day before, or you're doing a hard run and you're pushing the boundaries. But when you're if you're first getting into running or doing that Couch to 5K, it is pretty tough just to get to 5Ks. Whereas for you and I now, it would be like 5 kilometers, like the warm up. So I think it is about losing. It's something about, those slow incremental changes over time that maybe you lose perspective. I don't know what you think the reason is, that we forget how hard it was at the start.
I think we do forget how hard, and it just suddenly what becomes hard, what's hard initially then sort of becomes normal. And then I think also, like, I've always been a big believer in sort of, it was that cliched, like you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with, but this sense of going to surround yourself with people who are better than yourself. So like really sort of, and I think you start running and then start surrounding yourself with people, and invariably they're better or more further advanced. And so suddenly what you do doesn't even feel normal compared to what the people who are like, these aren't even Eliud Kipchoge on TV. This is just the people like in your run group or the people you're out running with. And it suddenly just becomes like, even that becomes just more and more normalized.
I guess it's worth pointing out to listeners, I'm from South Africa, you're from Wales.
Yeah.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but my impression, because I live in the UK, is that Wales is quite different from the rest of, let's say specifically England, okay? And maybe
Yes.
it's because we're rugby playing nations, but the approach to sport is a bit different. So I don't know, this whole principle of surround yourself. When you were a kid growing up, was it expected that you would be out there and running? I mean, what was the approach to running and exercise?
Well, if this was the thing, which is like, so I wasn't a runner, right, growing up, and running was the punishment.
Yeah, yeah.
Right. So I grew up and it was like playing rugby, and I wasn't a great rugby player. My dad happened to be a pretty good rugby player. I didn't quite get that, both either that talent or the sort of inclination, the drive
Okay.
that it really lit me up. And I remember like in running, like it's like that was the sort of like if you do something wrong or you weren't paying attention, you like run laps around the pitch or something. That was like extra punishment. And that was running. And again, in rugby, if you are running, you're generally trying to run fast towards the other side, either to tackle someone or to try to like weave through them or something like that. And I know you're South African, so like we have that common rugby passion and bond. I don't think I even like really thought about running like that. I distinctly remember there was like one day where like we didn't run or something. We're supposed to do like cross country, and our school was on a hill and we had to go run somewhere around. And I think everyone got lost, and it was just like a disaster. So like I never got into running. Did you run when you were growing up?
Not only for sport, and I
Uh-huh.
guess South Africa, probably in a similar way, it's quite a sports culture. So I don't know about
Mhm.
what you guys had at school, but we had to play sport in the summer and in the winter. I think at one stage at my school, you had to do 2 summer sports, 2 winter sports. And then as
Mm.
you got older, now I was never the best at sport at all. But
Yeah.
one thing I realized is if I wanted to be in a good hockey team, I could at least be fitter than some of the others. And actually, for some reason, when we used to do the fitness sessions, I did used to get quite into it. But I got brought up by a very good rugby playing father who was good at lots of sport. And I wouldn't
Yeah.
say that I did a lot of running per se, but we were made to do things like lots of swimming training. There's a famous cycle race in Cape Town every year called the Argus Cycle Tour. It's 100 and something kilometers. When I was at school, my dad made my brother and I train for it, get up before school and do it. And so I think there was something about learning early on that being physical and pushing yourself to do uncomfortable things physically was normal. That was
Yeah.
normalized. So
Right.
I wasn't really into running. So I had to do things like cross country. And as you said, it was a bit more like a punishment, like, oh gosh, here we go around the forest. We're going to get lost. It's going to be, we're going to get muddy. It's going to be cold. It's going to be painful. And those memories of like school fields and your lungs are burning in the cold and you're covered in mud by the time you come back. It's not
Yeah.
pleasant. No one wants to do it. And then the school showers are cold and all of that sort of stuff. So it was never, and I think I always just thought either you were in the athletics team or you weren't. So some kids were just, I don't know, maybe they were from running families or they were just good at running. And I never saw myself as good at running, but I did see myself as somebody who had to be physical and did need to be
Mm.
fit. That was maybe
Yeah.
a difference. There wasn't an option to sit on the sideline and just hang out and watch other people
Yeah.
do sport.
Totally. Our school was pretty small, so it wasn't like crazy competitive in the different teams. So like I can make the rugby team, so I played rugby because everyone played rugby. And then in the summer we played cricket because I actually like enjoyed those sports. Never felt I was particularly good at any of them. And then the funny thing is like I grew up in the mountains in Wales, in the countryside.
Oh, did you? Wow.
And but we would do a lot of hiking and camping. And so we would go out on walks. Like, yeah, it's like, actually, I'm too Americanized. We never called it hiking. We just went out for a walk, right?
Yeah.
And there's something about that, which was like, it really is sort of just not meant to be going fast in any way. And you do stop and look at the birds and take in the views. And I just remember my dad would have a backpack and then it would have a thermos. You remember like a thermos?
Exactly, yes.
And in
Oh,
the
we had
thermos,
that.
you unscrew the top off and it would be like a cup of tea. Like it would be
Yeah.
pre-made tea. So you like have some tea and you sit on a rock and eat a cheese sandwich or something. That was like,
But did you like doing that as a kid? Did you like it?
I
'Cause
loved
we
doing
did
that. I loved
but I
getting
was like, oh
outdoors.
God, we're hiking again. We're hiking up the mountain. But actually the memories of that are really the best.
I know. And then I think it was like I'd always have like toy car when I was really little. I'd have always have some toys with me that we would play. We'd find a rock and race
Okay.
the cars on the rock or something silly like. So it's just those little pieces there. All the sort of seeds were there, but I wasn't. I didn't even know what trail running was or cross
Mm.
country or fell running back then. So what got you into running? Like when in life did you get into it?
So as I said, I was always quite fit. I was always quite into sport. There was that sort of stage when I guess as a teenager, I became more aware of how I looked. So
Mm.
then I did start doing things like, South Africa grew up in apartheid. We didn't have big gyms that you could become a member of
Mm-hmm.
until kind of the 90s. And that arrived in the 90s when I was still at school, but I was a teenager.
Mm.
And we were kind of opening up to the world and seeing what was going on in the rest of the world. And it all sort of happened at the same time. Gyms arrived, became a teenager, a bit more aware of how I looked, and I got a bit into fitness. So I used to play sport for school, and then I would go to the gym. I think I was trying to look more in shape or toned. I just remember reading magazines and looking at that sort of stuff. So I got into that sort of fitness world. And then when I went into university, that continued. And a lot of my friends, we all went to the gym together. But through that, I made friends with people who were joining running clubs. So I actually joined a running club at university. And I won't lie, a lot of my sport choices, I also did Kung Fu for a while because the guy who came to demonstrate it looked like Keanu Reeves, but better and taller. So I did join Kung Fu for quite some time because the instructor was very easy on the eye. And I definitely got into running because there were some nice boys running. So I won't lie that it was all just about the sport. It was also, as there was a social element. Let's put it that way. It was a social element. So that's how I first got into it. And I ran quite a bit at university, but it was sort of on and off. And then again, when I moved away, because I went to medical school, and then after I'd qualified, I went to live in a different part of South Africa to get some different experience, a sort of community service type experience. And when I was wanting to meet new people in the town I was living, it was a small town, I did things like join a run club because it was a way of meeting new people and some nice men, for example. So yes,
Yeah.
I haven't thought about that for a long time, but it definitely the
Yeah.
social aspect, yeah. And what about you? How did you get into running?
So again, it's like I got into running much later. I think some of the seeds have been sowed with sort of in my university, I went to Oxford and I discovered rowing. I wasn't rowing for the Oxford Rowing Club, but like Oxford's made up of colleges and each college has their own boat club. And when you join, like very few people go to Oxford and actually already row before. There are some people where they rowed at school, but and so there was a real opportunity for people to learn to row. And so that was sort of the thing. And I ended up in a crew, and then it's sort of it's interesting when you stop back and reflect on this. That was the beginning of endurance sport for me, because rowing is an endurance sport, but it's also a team sport. I really liked the camaraderie, but then it's also like I remember like you get up early in the mornings, like we'd have to be on the water early to be off the water and then back and get to your classes or lectures, and so like people either knocking on your door if you sort of weren't outside on time, or knocking on other people's doors to get them out to make sure they didn't sleep through their alarms. And on the water early and cold. So it's really funny when I compare to now of sort of like getting up early to run. It's like the seeds there were, but I wasn't into running. Again, we would do running as a warm up for rowing. And like that was like, and we were it was probably like the slowest jog ever. It was just something to, while we chit chatted and sort of like, got ready to get in the boat. It was only then much later in life. I think it was in my sort of early 30s. And I came into it from the perspective of the challenge. So I'd gone into CrossFit, which we don't have to go down that cult rabbit hole, but I'd gone into CrossFit and made some good friends. And one of my friends like, hey, we should sign up and do a Tough Mudder. And I remember being so scared of that, idea, but it's like, oh, well, it's broken up with obstacles. And so I sort of got into running more. Like, I think you even asked the question, why do some people run, to me, like earlier? And it's like, I think I got into it as like the achievement orientation. Like it was something to achieve. But in achieving it, I actually started to love the actual act of running.
But I'm just curious to know, because you obviously mentioned you're at Oxford. So I'm sure most people listening will know if you go to Oxford, you have to have done pretty well at school, which normally means you have to have done a bit of work along the way. So what I'm getting at is, I also associate rowing with discipline. The rowers that you would know they would be very fit, focus on the nutrition, very strong, much like running, much like I was talking about the cycling, the days when I had to cycle, my dad got us trained. There's something around what I'm wondering here. Is there a theme that it's the discipline that you learn early on, or the discipline becomes a way of life? And I'm kind of wondering, is that like, were you always a disciplined person? Is that kind of how it works, or how it kind of came together?
It's a great question about discipline. I don't really think so. But in a way, I was always disciplined at like, doing my homework
Okay.
at school.
So you're
like
hardworking. You're hardworking.
So I was hard worker at school.
Yeah. Okay.
And I think I had pretty good structure.
Yeah.
So I just got it done. When it needed to get done. And so, but it's like, I think that's the discipline really came from rowing in college. That was the real sort of like, this is what we do. I even remember, and obviously, I'm sober 10 years now. So I used to like to drink. And I really fell into drinking in college, but it was quite polarized when I got into rowing, because like we would actually not drink for most of the, sort of at least 5-6 weeks of the year while we were in peak training until the main regatta or the main event. And then obviously everything went to shit and it was like, extreme the other direction. We made up for it in a bad way. But I remember that discipline of even going out, even in times when I was, quote unquote, a drinker and not drinking on a night out because we were rowing the next day or we were in like peak training. So I think the discipline was there. I think there's something you sort of thrive and start to enjoy that discipline.
Yeah. But that's what I'm wondering, if it makes it easier. Does it make it easier for you later in life if you've got that discipline? You know how to get up when it's cold, when you don't feel like it. You learn that, because that's one of the things about running is like, do you ever really feel like going for a run? Sometimes, but not always.
No, not most of the time. It's just that discipline, that habit of like knowing, I know what it feels like after the run.
Yeah.
And not just the sort of endorphins of like the actual physical activity, but then the satisfaction of doing the work and doing the work that I know is working towards a goal that is going to take some time to work through. So it's only going to get there through consistency. I can't cram the exam with fitness and running.
So do you run now kind of because it's a habit, or is it something that you very consciously choose to do? Like, what keeps you running?
I would say for the first sort of 5 years of my running, I was running in order to achieve something. So it was, and the achievements and it was amazing, but it was also the fallacy, right? It was the I'll be happy when. So I do the Tough Mudder. Tough Mudder was actually a blast. And I found the running easier than the obstacles. And then it was like, what's the next one? It's like, we did like a GoRuck event where you run around with a backpack full of bricks. And then it was like, well, now I'll do a trail marathon. Like I'll do a marathon. I want to do a marathon. And then it was like, now I'll try ultras, because now like what would like maybe 100-mile will really make me feel happy, And it's like, it's not that it didn't make me feel happy, but that's a flawed premise. And so I think that my lead in was the sort of like doing these things for these greater achievements, to do something. And it was sort of pushing myself. Some of that it is quite external, but some of it was intrinsic as well. It was like, I don't know if anyone could run 100 miles. Like, could I run 100 miles? Doesn't matter how fast you run 100 miles. Like, could you do it? And so like, there was this intrinsic, the challenge of like, what can I do? And I think that motivated me for the sort of first sort of 5+ years of my running career. And then the interesting thing then is more this shift to like just mastery. Like now what motivates me to why I run is because I'm just getting better, a little bit better each day on average over a long time. There are days I get worse, or the days, you have setbacks, but it's like, I'm just constantly working and I don't know how good I can get. And I know I'm fighting time in the sense like we're not getting younger. We're not whippersnappers anymore. And so there's an inevitable point but the cool thing, at least for me, is that I never peaked in my 20s so that like all my times are getting slower. I think I'm still getting faster, even if like age is against me, because the sort of experience, and I guess that's another thing why I think I like running so much, is that it's an aerobic game that we can keep stacking for a long time. And it's like, if it's a sprinter, like I'm no way getting fast. You're only going to be getting slower over the years as a sprinter, say.
Yeah, and I'm similar in that I did run when I was younger, but then I've always kept fitness going, but I'd only done lots of half marathons in my 20s. And I only picked up running marathons in the last few years. So I've only run 3 marathons. One I DNF'd. I didn't finish because I was throwing
Mhm.
up, which wasn't coping very well with the gels or whatever the hell else was going on in my pre-race breakfast. The other two I have finished, and then I'm not that even experienced. So I also am in the position that I am getting hopefully faster, even though I'm in my late 40s. But I can
Yeah.
also share that my partner Dale has run probably 30 plus marathons and some ultras, but he's faster now and he's 50 than when he
I
was
love
younger,
that.
because he said he used to drink and drink quite heavily and wasn't
Mhm.
as consistent. So he was just going out there and just like hammering all these races. And
Mm.
now, I don't know, there's a bit more science behind it.
Mhm.
He doesn't drink, so he's more disciplined, he's more consistent. So he's actually knocked off half an hour of his PB on his marathon time in the last couple of years. So I also find that quite interesting. Plus, I think something that you and I are talking about off air is, as we're getting older, I guess the strength work then also could potentially help us stay a bit faster if we're keeping our, maintaining muscle mass or improving our strength.
Yeah. I mean, before we go there, I'm not sure if anyone's ever going to listen to this first episode of ours. And if they do, great. And kudos to you to push through this first one that we're doing. But we're not this is not our job or a thing. Like,
No.
you're an entrepreneur, you're an executive coach. You spend most of your days helping clients and helping, executive like companies.
Yeah.
Why does this such a big part of your life? Like, why
Running.
is this like running piece such a big part, given that that's like a big, like, there's a lot of people who could be it could be seen that they're all in on their work. And I'm not saying you're not all in your work, I know that, but they could just be the work is their all consuming thing and everything is work. And maybe they're networking all the time and they're going out to try to win clients or do all these different things where why is this such a big thing for you? Why are we even having this podcast in a way?
I think that the reason I got into trying to take my running more seriously is because we kind of touched on it earlier. I was always doing a lot of sport and a lot of exercise.
Yeah.
And I haven't always had the healthiest relationship with exercise. And I'm quite a competitive person. I'm a little bit, what people call type A. I was a medical student. I worked in finance. I've kind of got I don't want to say typical makeup of a type A personality, but I've been always very disciplined, hardworking, and always exercised a lot. So I think I reached a point a few years ago where I thought, what almost is the point of all of this going to the gym, running, if I'm not actually testing myself? I can sit and think, oh, I bet you I could run a sub 90 half marathon if I trained, but I haven't actually done it. So, and also because I also had some changes in my personal life. So I had been married before. We didn't have kids. So then this relationship that I have with my current partner, we've been together for 7 to 8 years. He's got kids. So I've become a stepmother. We've moved from South Africa. I'd lived in the UK. We've been in South Africa. We were coming back again.
Yeah.
And it felt a bit like I also need something for myself outside of working, being a stepmother, running the house, we're not married, but a wife. And I think that's where I decided I'm going to see what I can do. Get a coach, follow a bit of a formula, and let's see what happens. So I guess there's something to focus on outside of just exercising to look a certain way. Something to focus on outside of just doing stuff for other people. I mean, I'm not trying to sound like I'm just spend my life doing things for others, but I was falling into that trap. So yeah, I think it gave me a different thing to focus on that was kind of for me.
It's so easy to fall into that trap. And I know so many folks as well who it's all work and all family. And I often ask them what's the thing you do for you? And then they're like, oh, well, I do this thing. And it's that sounds like you do that for the family, right?
Yeah.
And then it's this thing. It's that sounds like you're doing it to continue to get better at work. What's the thing you do for you for the intrinsic, benefit of you, in the sense of our running does not improve our work. I don't get more business because I run in any way.
Not.
I like to think
in fact, these days I'm always trying to move my meetings. I'm thinking, oh, how can I maybe meet this person a bit later or whatever, so I can get my run in. So yeah, I'm acting a bit like a professional athlete, but I'm not.
Yeah. But that's part of the puzzle is I think, trying to organized and be disciplined, because like, hey, I want to get these things in, I'm going to be more intentional. But I do think it's this element of, I love this idea of mastery, because mastery is no finish line, there is no end. And for some people it won't be running. Like, I have a good friend and he is just so inspired. He's one of the best software developers I've ever met, and data scientist, and he's an absolute genius there. And he spends a lot of time of his day there, and he's a father and a husband, but he loves instruments, particularly stringed instruments, and he can sit there for hours playing, he's like now trying to get amazing at a ukulele. He's like works through different instruments, and he will just sit there and just jam for hours. And it's like, he's not doing it to perform on a stage or to do a thing. And even though we might sign up for races, those races are just little, they sort of like, they're like bookends, or they're like things to sort of help structure around. But any given race doesn't matter, because we've DNF'd races, and we've had races that didn't go towards to plan and get the result we wanted. But I think I love this idea of the mastery of the thing that's like something for you. And of course, this, like anything, it could become all consuming, right? And we're always mindful of that. But I think absent that, it's like, I think we miss something as humans, something to sort of work on that is this like a lifelong pursuit, and something that can just like, just the satisfaction of just making incremental progress, you know, having a mini purpose in each day with each run, or each week with each sort of training block, is something that really is meaningful for me.
Yeah. And actually, I was thinking now while you were talking, we had also spoken off air about how we can get sucked into all the sort of add-ons that aren't necessary in running, whether it's the shoes or the tech. But I'm actually wondering if it is about the mastery. So if you've been running for a while, you will think to yourself, how might I get better? Okay, maybe everyone's talking about fueling. Maybe I need to do a bit of fueling. Or everyone's talking about the shoes or heat training or this. Although a lot is made of people sort of taking the piss out of people, spending money on all this stuff, I actually wonder if there's a bit of it is the mastery element. If you're going to become good at guitar, you might over time say, I'm going to try different strings, I'm going to get a different guitar. I'm just wondering off the top of my head if that's part of it.
I think it is. And I think there's a lot of the mockery happens, which is like, if you're like skipping your runs, you work out twice, you run twice a week, you don't run, then like kill yourself with a long run where you're crushed and you slow down dramatically through it. And then you've signed up for a marathon, you're undertrained, and you're like, well, I'm going to buy the super shoes, I'm going to take the bike. Like, there's a point there where it's like, you're trying to paper over the cracks.
Yeah.
And then I think there is the thing, which is like, when I look at you and your training, is like, you're consistent. And I'm consistent as well. Like, it's like, I look back to the last 2 years, it's like, there's no argument that I have not put in the consistent work. And then you have a coach. I've had a coach. I also follow like training plans, so that, because there's obviously, we can train ourselves into the ground blindly and not get results, because we were just sort of like being idiots or just being obsessed with the training, doing too much. But there is something with the mastery, is like, if you have those blocks, then is there something else? And then obviously the Instagram algorithm will then socially target us for something. So tell us what you got sucked into something lately. Tell us about that.
Well, I get sucked into all sorts of things on Instagram. I mean, if you look at my feed, first of all, it's golden retrievers and running, because I have a golden retriever.
That's a great combination.
Old. So that's it. So there's not a lot of, I watched this Manosphere thing on Netflix the other day, the Louis Theroux one, and I don't get anything. I don't even know what's going on in social media for the rest of the world, because I'm literally in running and golden retrievers. But Instagram is very good at showing me things I might want to buy, maybe things for around the home. I bought an amazing umbrella. Basically, it'll keep giving me stuff, and then eventually I'll click on it and I'll buy it, and then it moves to something else. So I have been seeing lots of running things, and I have recently bought the most revolting tasting, it's called Nomio.
Okay.
It's broccoli sprouts. I've read it.
I mean, I like broccoli, but this is not, apparently, you're not selling it to me here.
It's the equivalent of 2 kilograms of broccoli sprouts in one little shot. Okay.
Oh my gosh.
It's basically broccoli and lemon juice, but elites are claiming that it reduces fatigue. So if you are running a hard session or you're running a race, you take this 3 hours before, and it'll help you run harder, but you won't feel as much fatigue. But there's lots of other ones. There's a beetroot shot. I did the beetroot. I don't know if you've ever done the beetroot ones.
No, but that sounds
There's
cool.
bicarb. I think you've tried that.
Yeah, I have tried that.
So it's all the same stuff. So
Yeah, but that's
I've done
cool.
the beetroot before, and I think one of the reasons I DNF'd at Paris last year was without oversharing. When you go to the loo after having a week of beetroot shots,
Yeah, it's gonna
everything
not
is
look
like a
pretty.
beetroot color, yeah, and you think you're dying. Like, well, you think
And you might
something
not
bad's
actually be
happening.
dying. It might
Yeah.
just be beetroots. Oh, okay,
And
that's good to know.
then
I will.
oh, it
That's a
was
good reason
terrible.
not to
On the
do beetroot.
morning
At
of the
least in
marathon, on the morning of the marathon, I was like, whoa, I think I'm in a world of trouble. So I won't be doing the beetroot ones again, but people swear by it.
okay.
So
Cool.
I've started the broccoli ones to see, but they aren't cheap. So I think each broccoli shot's about £5. So I don't know what that is, 4 or 5 pounds.
Yeah.
So I was doing some basic arithmetic on, what your running breakfast could look like. Let's say you do a Red
Okay.
Bull or a coffee, couple of
Yeah.
pounds there, 2-3 pounds, I guess is much the same.
Yeah.
Let's say one of these Nomeo shots, another 5 pounds. Your usual food, a couple of pounds there. My carb, how much is it? 15 pounds, something like that.
A bit less than that because you can cut it up. You can sort of not
Okay.
micro dose, but more limited dose it. So I think it's more like 7 or 8. But
But then you add
if
in the
you're-
beetroot shot, you can easily get to 20,
You can
25
easy-
pounds
that's
your
crazy, isn't it?
for a pre-race or a pre-tough. Because what do they say? You've got to practice whatever you do on race day. So
Yeah,
let's say
for
at
sure.
least 4 or 5 tough sessions before your marathon, you're going to do it. So you can spend hundreds of pounds just on what you eat before. Never mind the gels during the event. Could spend another, say, 25, 30 pounds there. So you could be like 50 pounds in just for the food
That's
for the
kinda
race
crazy,
day.
isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and I think race
But
day
we do
is
it. We do it.
I think race day is the exception, right, as well. And obviously you need to test something, so I totally hear that. I think it's like, for me, it's like, is it, as long as it's the incremental on top of the thing, it's not
The
like
actual
the
training,
like on top of the training. And I do think it's interesting, the things that allow you to sort of push more, and if that does lead to the adaptation, I think that's really interesting. Those are really interesting things, whether that's the bicarb or the Nomeo, to have a more impactful workout that has more adaptation, and then week over week it could be really compounded and stuff right now.
And what happens if it just makes you feel like you can push harder? That in itself might be worth it for the 5 pounds that you throw at it.
For sure.
Potentially
For sure.
a bit of the placebo effect, which is the thing. So anyway, I'm giving it a shot, literal shot. I
Literal
ordered
shots.
a few. They arrived online. And I won't say, so
Okay,
basically
you have to report back. You have to report back and let us know
I'm going to try.
how this goes with this little experiment.
But it's quite a look. Sort of I have rice and jam and banana and this shot and a coffee. And it's like, a year ago, I would never have dreamt that this is what I would be eating before my big runs or a race.
I love it. It's like feel in the work. And I think this is, it's interesting to have the sort of puzzle to solve, right? Of like, it's not talent, just talent. And obviously it is consistency in training, but it's like, it's not just like pure fitness. It is about, fuel in the whole of training, but then fuel in the work on the day. It's like, I think I did one, didn't I? I think it was like a couple of months ago, and you called me out on it because I kind of went out on a run, and I had been a keto sort of bro, Kool-Aid, Dave Asprey back in the day, and that had worked for me when I was not in deep training, and particularly if I was over, carrying extra weight, like doing the bulletproof coffee and having the mind be clear and all that kind of thing. But I did that, and I was like, I'm going for a run, it's not going to be that long, and I went and I just drank, like a bulletproof coffee, like coffee with a little keto creamer in it. And then went on the run, and then it became like I don't know, maybe it was a 10-mile run, and I like completely bonked doing it and completely fell apart because normally I feel, and even you're like, "Gee, what are you doing? You know better than this." And I was like, I know I do know better than this. I don't quite know what happened that day, but there was a bit of your keto and I was
bro
completely
flashback.
fell apart, and it was, it was an important lesson not to do that, but we still make.
So where would you say that your improvements come from now when you feel and you notice that you're getting better at running, whatever it is, like executing on the race or getting more training in? What is it that you think is helping you get better? How are you mastering it more?
I think the two things, I think consistency. I'm way more consistent. And one of the things with the consistency, I do think fueling in the actual workout or the run, I still remember, years ago when I was, so maybe years, like decades ago. And I remember doing sort of a long run on a Friday and then going to work and like being like wrecked all day.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of it's because it like wasn't fueled. Like, I might have taken a
Yeah.
couple of gels, but really wasn't sort of fueling the work. I think the fuel in the work makes a difference and just is that I'm not as wrecked. And so that on a day afterwards, which is good for work, because like we're not professionals, we can't just go and nap or just put our feet up and sort of just relax in between training sessions. We're doing this as a preamble to go to work and do the work we need to do. So I think that's a big one. And then that's led to the more consistency over. And then, I think a big one for me, and this is all part of like, maybe we'll end up talking about this in the podcast, is sort of like this sort of aging athlete element. Like we're not getting younger. And there are times when, I wake up when I feel like I'm creaking. I feel like I'm 80 years old. And I definitely have noticed that, like, if I've done anything over the last, last year or at least last 6 months is focus on protein, is like getting enough protein, because I'm obviously like breaking down the body with all this amount of training. And it needs to rebuild. And of course you need rest days and you need to like, to like modulate the training so that we're not all going hard all the time. The body can recover. But I think having the sort of like substrate that the body can rebuild the muscles, so that it can fuel the workout with carbs and rebuild the muscles with protein. But we're talking a lot about nutrition, a lot about running. What else do we want to talk about when we're getting together here?
What comes to, what do you think people would be curious to know about?
I think one, and we can always connect it back to running, is with whatever you're working on. I'm a big believer in, knowing your talents and strengths, but like, also seeing the weaknesses or seeing where you feel like you have struggled, like trying to diagnose a problem and then go fix it. And we do that a lot at work. I do that a lot with clients. My one, which haven't figured it out completely, is like I really felt in the last couple of big races, my last Leadville DNF last summer, and I'd finished that race 3 times. But last summer I had big ambitions and my ego was writing checks that my body couldn't cash, quite frankly.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of it was down to strength. Like I think I feel like I had a lot of a good aerobic fitness, but I don't think the legs could really match that aerobic level, and they got cooked pretty early. But it also meant they were like really suffered on the climbs. I feel like worse than I had before. So that's kind of like one area of just like trying to see what I think is an area that needs improvement, and then going about doing it. I've like decided strength is really important. And so then after my I'd had a block of training and had a race in January, which went really well. I got a PR my half marathon and decided to do a little reset. And of course I went all in on the strength training and freaking hurt my back, which is sort of a classic Hugh move to sort of, and crazy given I hadn't got injured at all in the prior 18 months. But it really led to me. It's like, oh, like I want to get better. I want to be stronger. I want to do more strength training. It's actually on the area I'm really like, it's not something I have a lot of strong training history and necessarily like know exactly what to do with the exact technique or have the good balance and stuff in the body to do the things. It's like, oh, and so like I hurt myself, but luckily not too bad. And it was like, I just need to get a coach. Like I don't have a running coach right now because I'm in it. I feel like I know what to do with running, and I know next time I have an event that I really care about, that's really matters, that I want to work towards, I may hire one. But I was like, oh, I need to hire a strength coach to like really address that area, because it's not. I don't think I'm never going to be good at strength. It's just like it's an underdeveloped area. Maybe that's the sort of thing. Areas that are underdeveloped.
I mean, I often will ask clients, you mentioned do executive coaching, so I may do leadership teams or individuals, but one of the questions we'll always and often ask senior execs is around what are your patterns in terms of what derails you. And I have one of these big beliefs in life that you will keep needing to learn the same lesson, and you will be kept given the same lesson to learn until you learn it. And I say this in my mid to late 40s, I say very non-specific. But there are things that are just patterns for most of us. My colleague calls it the pebble in your shoe. So you talk about going on these hikes when you're a kid. If you got a stone in your shoe, the kind of annoyance, because over time that would just wear you down and then it forms this blister.
Yeah.
What can we do to spot our patterns? Here I go. I'm going to. So for you are kind of saying strength is maybe your weakness, but then you have to check your ego. Like you don't know everything about strength. I need to get a coach on that one. The reason I got a coach is because probably for me, I overdo everything.
Okay.
So for me, one of the reasons I have a running coach is I'm not good at giving myself a rest day. I'll do
Uh,
it if I'm told.
yeah.
So what I have to do is check in with my coach. Okay, my leg is sore. Do you think I should run today? Because even if there's a double run in, if my leg is sore, I'll think, oh, I need to do it. So for me, that's one of my derailers is overdoing things. So
Overdoing things.
I think for all of us as people in whatever sphere of life, what is the thing that derails you? What's the thing that trips you up? And then that's where you have to be able to check your ego and say, historically, I've not been good at this. How can I
Mm-hmm.
draw others in? What are the things that I can do to catch myself from doing this thing that so often trips me up? So I always find that quite an interesting way of looking at it.
Yeah, I really do like that. I mean, observing the patterns. I mean, that's so true. And so much of like we will do the same behavior over and over. And often we've learned it, maybe even learned it from childhood or learned it from our parents. What are some of the things you see with some of your clients like that? Like the sort of patterns you said what are some of the patterns you often see coming out there that you help them that they might not even see themselves?
I guess it's different for everybody, but
Mm-hmm.
it could be that when people are becoming stressed, becoming tired, they have a certain way of reacting and responding. So I
Yes.
see some people can, they maybe perhaps don't bring their best selves to, I don't know, whatever forum at work that means that they might show up in a way that's maybe they're a bit more snappy or they don't communicate as clearly. Or I've got a client who regularly quits things earlier.
Mm.
So he's progressing well, everything's going great. He gets frustrated, he gets tired, he gets stressed, and then he'll literally think of, okay, I'm not going to continue with that. I'm not doing it. I'm leaving it to someone else, or I'm taking myself out of the running for that, or so kind of scuppers himself just as he's getting to the point that probably he should persevere through.
Mm.
So I've seen him do it a few times, and also because I knew him from a previous life where he actually left where we
Yeah.
worked. He decided, no,
Wow.
the role isn't right for him anymore. But actually, he really was almost just at the tipping point that he needed to kind of push through.
Uh-huh. Yes.
So, a good
So
coach is being
close.
able to be able to say, and he was sort of talking the other day about how perhaps he shouldn't continue with his PhD. He's doing a PhD on the side, something he's been working on for quite a long time. Perhaps this is a great opportunity to stop doing his PhD and do something else. And I'm like, whoa, let's remind ourselves of the things that have tripped you up in the past. So, he came to that inside himself. Okay, I remember this sort of 4 or 5 times I've thrown in the towel too early because I've kind of reached a point that I think I can't take anymore. I'm
Yeah.
responding. It's that kind of reacting, responding thing. So
Yeah.
how to help people
Totally.
when they're reaching that point that, maybe you need to do something different this time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think that's so interesting. And it's like a defense mechanism,
Yeah.
obviously. Um, the throwing the towel in early is interesting. The other one I was watching or listening to something with Steve Magnus, who I know we both love as an author, and this idea about if you don't commit enough, you protect your ego. Because if
Yeah,
you
yeah.
go all in or if you follow it through and you still fail, that can be sort of like crushing to the
Much
ego.
worse.
But if you sort of, throw the towel in or if you like don't do the work, you're like, oh, then you sort of give yourself like, well, I coulda, shoulda, woulda, but it's like very ego protective. But it's like this idea that it is cool to care. It's good. It's cool to actually just go and push through or do or commit to the thing, put in the work, even if it doesn't work out, even if you don't get the result in the end, because you can always learn from it and you can always get better. But I really like you observed that with and it does come down. It's quite animalistic. I think with me, I'm not a fighter. I actually know this for a reason. I was like leaving the gym the other day and I backed out in my car and as I'm driving off, I'm driving very slow. It's a small parking lot. And this guy crossing, there's a restaurant next door. I think he's going in there to work. This is mid-afternoon. And I went I was sort of like trying to put my seatbelt and I went like this, meaning like, yeah, you can cross. I'm not going to go. And I'm not sure if he thought that I was like, and he's like, you cool, man? You like, and I was like, no. I'm like, I'm totally cool. Like, I'm not like trying to like
I'm
pick
not
a
looking
fight
to
with you. But
fight.
this guy
Yeah.
was like, he was ready to go. Like, I don't know what was happening with his day or what he was like. He was ready to go. And I was like, no. I'm not like, I don't want to fight. I don't want to fight anyone. So mine is a little bit like, I don't even know if it's the flight or the fawn in the sense of or freeze. It's like, I often like to, if I'm like, unsure or like I'm like I'll often just like withdraw and
Yeah,
then just like try to buy time to figure out like how things change. And now that when I know myself do that, I tell certain people like that I work with or whatever, it's like, hey, you can like, if I'm doing my thing, you're doing the thing where you're trying to like buy some time because you think suddenly the right answer is going to come and the thing there. So it's the mix of wanting to be right, which I know I always want to be right. You know, that's a hard
yeah.
ingrained pattern, but it's if I just like pause and wait, I can buy some more time.
Yeah, and that people might perceive that as you losing interest
Yes.
or
Yeah,
kind
or
of
I
digging your
checked out
heels
or I'm
in. Yeah.
ignoring. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I don't know if you've ever heard of Hogan, but it's like a psychometric test you can do. But there's derailers that we look at, and they're in different groups. One of them is moving against people. So the guy in the parking lot.
Yeah.
So you're under pressure, you're under stress, and you might come out as a bit more attacking, defensive, and that sort of thing. Like, or it could be moving away. So you sort of, hey, I need to slow down, I need space, or disappear. And then there's other one called moving towards, which is what I am, which quite often, which is the people pleasing. So if I get the feeling that my team isn't happy or boss isn't happy, I'll go out of my way to sort of be extra dutiful and diligent. But that can really unstick you because you could put so much time and energy into it and then really like lose your sense of self trying to sort of
Yes.
please. And
Yes.
and that one I've learned so many times in my life. I keep learning. Okay, there's times that you need to hold your nerve, say what you think. So it's interesting how everyone has got their different ways of reacting under pressure and stress.
Yeah. I'm going out on a limb here. We never talked about this, but like, does running ever help you deal with any of that? Like, is there anything in running that you can sort of use to get better at to sort of address that thing that you know that people please in there? I'm just curious. I don't even know if that's a thing here, but it's like
I
I'm always
think
curious, maybe like how some of the things we actually like. The running is a little lab, or the running is a gym to us to like work on that like a non-physical muscle.
yeah, I mean, look, I think part of it where it's not helpful is pleasing the coach, getting accolades for running well. However,
Yeah.
as you mentioned earlier, where I run often in London in Battersea Park, there's so many people, so much better, and they're not like elites. They're just much better runners, just coming, zooming past you. So it's that notion that you can't always control what's going to happen on the day. I went to Berlin last year. I thought I'd run a sub 3. It was 28 degrees. I completely
so hot.
messed up the entire race
Yeah.
because of sort of lack of experience, bad decisions, etc., etc. Don't really know what you're doing. So there's something around you can't control everything. So running is great because you can follow the plan, you can get the shoes, you can try and work on nutrition, you can try and do everything. But actually on the day, so many things can happen. The execution of it. So there's something about you can control a bit, but there's a lot that you absolutely cannot control.
I think that's so interesting because I love this idea because you could also, the cliche as well is control the controllables, right? Is like, and I think that's what is really cool about running is that by and large, it's a solo sport and by that, that can seem selfish. I think the thing I see about that is like personal responsibility. Like it's such a high personal responsibility activity. I can't blame it on anyone else. Like it's only me who puts in the work and who can try to show up on the day. And I can't really, like, I can have a support crew or some cheerleaders, but like, I've got to do the part and take the responsibility. But I think but there are these unknowns which have this factor which you have to learn to deal with, but it's not so complex a system that you can't make sense of it. Like, I think we're both like in business. Sometimes there are so many people and so many different companies and partners, and you've got a customer and a vendor, all these things that it's like, it's such a complex system. You can try to like see your role in it and take personal responsibility of what you're doing, the role you're playing and how you show up or how you act. But sometimes it's hard to like see what's going on because there's so much randomness and like the market did this and a customer did that. And these people may or may not be acting rationally. And I do like this element that like when we run and when we race, there are things we try to control. It's not, it's not what happens on paper is what happens on paper is the foregone conclusion. You still have to show up and race, but it's not such a complicated system that you can't sort of, control some things and then see what happens with others and then respond afterwards.
It is still very exposing because,
Yeah.
as you said, you still, if it's your business, it could be, oh, well, like let's say I do a proposal for a new piece of business, I don't win it. Well, it could be that, okay, they may not like the proposal, but maybe they'd already picked somebody else, or maybe it was a fee thing, a budget thing, or it's the market, or whatever it is. Or maybe they're not actually picking anybody in the end after all. But there's something about doing a race specifically where you've tried to control the variables, then there's ones you can't control, but at the end of the day, it's you on your own trying to get from A to B as fast as you can. And it is quite exposing. No one else can do that bit for you. There's no kind of confusion. So I think the bit that I'm almost most intrigued about is almost the mental component around how you actually execute, how you figure out how to really manage yourself best on race day. There's something around that. I'm nowhere near yet having worked it out. And so it's something we can chat about at some stage, but there's something around knowing when it's time to really push, how much you can get out of yourself. Because it's almost quite scary, like you were talking about taking a risk on something and then you could just blow up, but not quite knowing how hard you push. Do you say, well, I didn't really try, or actually, no, I went all out? So it's quite an interesting push and pull that you get with yourself, I think. So
yeah. So I think that sort of segues into how I wanted to I thought about we could wrap this up just for today, but as things for us to go and talk about, we'll cover in future conversations, is that the execution element of when to push and when not to. And it's interesting, and we're not going to talk about it today, but I've gone and I've absolutely sent it in a marathon and completely blown up. And that was, I kind of wanted to see, the sort of the fuck around and find out idea. I wanted to see what would happen. But then I've also done one where it's just ran with a pace group where I didn't purposely go and overextend. It was definitely a hard pace group, but I could have gone for 5 minutes faster and then probably blown up as well, and then executed that one and the different learnings from both of them. It's not wouldn't always want to just do one and wouldn't always want to do the other. So I think that's cool. What are some other things you want to make sure we want us to start thinking about talking about in coming episodes?
I guess I'm curious to know, as I mentioned earlier, what would other people want to hear about? I think people always, the questions that you've asked me around, why you got into running, what keeps you running. I think stories are always good. I mean, we've known each other a while, but I bet there's so many stories that I don't know about yours. And even just hearing some of them today about you hiking, I'm picturing you also now. I'm wondering already, is this something you're doing with Henry, with your family now?
Yeah.
So I think some of the stories behind all of these things.
Yep.
I think that's what people want to hear about. And I actually just think from our own conversations, just hearing more of your stories, I'd love to hear more of that. So might sound a bit simplistic, but yeah, I think that's quite cool.
I love that idea. I love it. It's the stories around even the, doesn't have to be races, but activities or events. I think I really liked to dig in a bit more into the our cultural history, in the sense you being South African, you've been very gracious not to talk much about rugby today. Wales, celebrated, I think, the 3rd year running of a wooden spoon in the Six Nations this past
very
weekend.
Disappointing for you.
Pretty brutal. Only consolation was obviously England losing. So that,
I was about to say, the main thing is that England doesn't, as long as England doesn't win, we're all good.
We're all good. So we'll definitely have common bond there. We both support two teams, our own team and whoever's playing England.
Exactly.
And so I think some of those and how those sort of play into the upbringing and how we approach. I really like when we sort of seeing where the running can be this little laboratory, or this little maybe a laboratory sounds too precise at times, even though, well, I want to learn more about this broccoli experiment. But it's sometimes it's a sandpit, the running is a bit of a sandpit for us to try different things and experiment and sort of learn in this sort of more simplistic or somewhat contained environment. And yeah, just sort of I like it where we start to connect the random stuff. I mean, I think we haven't gone there today, but in this age of AI, I know at times we both feel a little overly digitized and overly connected to all things. AI and internet and sort of the getting back to basics. And by that, I mean for us as well, it's like seeing how we're so connected to our devices and our Stravas and our training peaks. And I wouldn't want to get rid of any of those, but I'm also very conscious of my relationship with those at times. So I think those are the sort of things that I'm excited for us to sort of cover.
Yeah, definitely.
But obviously, if anyone has
I love
questions,
those
if anyone listens to this first episode and has a question
Send us
for
some
us,
questions.
Sandra, if you listen to this first episode, you already know how to contact us. But actually, I will get my email, huw@h. You can send it if for some reason you don't already know us to connect us, but you probably do, and you can send it to us via a text or email. And we'd love to sort of answer your questions on this sort of like from sort of a Welshman and a South African who like to run a bunch.
Brilliant. Well, it's been great chatting to you and learning a little bit about you again today.
Yeah, and you too, Alice. And we'll chat again next week. I'm going to do this each week.
Good luck for your
so
week of
until
training.
then, exactly.
See you then.
So have a
Bye.
good week. Bye.
You too. Bye.